It's definitely a much more complicated process than I envisaged that it would be. Speaking to the participants, there's many layers and nuances to the issue of boundaries, but I think what was interesting was that actually just focusing on the topic itself really drew out people's understanding of what it actually means to them personally and how it impacts on their practice. So even though we were talking about it in a very broad way, it began a process in people which led them to really thinking about their practice on a deeper level. And I thought that was just interesting in itself, really. So the analysis was really about looking at the lived experience of the participants and really what does the word boundaries mean to them. So we know what's out there in the counselling literature and the guidance that's given by the different membership bodies, but I really wanted to know what does it actually mean to the counsellors and therapists that I interviewed, and how does it impact on their practice, and to be able to get some real life examples of that, really.
So what does it really mean for me and my own experience as a therapist?
Yeah.
And you said you looked at 5 person-centred, a psychodynamic and an integrative therapist. And it's quite a small sample, I know, in terms of difference of modalities, but I'm just wondering, was there any difference perhaps between those 3 modalities?
Again, it's really interesting that there was no commonality between therapeutic approaches. So all the person-centred therapists identified a different approach to boundaries and applied boundaries in very different and unique ways. So there was no commonality. I think there's some stereotypes out there in the literature in terms of how a person-centred or a psychodynamic counsellor or therapist would approach boundaries. But when I interviewed the participants, none of them fitted into that kind of stereotype of the therapeutic model that they were trained in. And actually, it was their own values that really drove how they approached boundaries and not necessarily the modality that they were trained in. There's 2 different types of tool, but they're kind of basically the same. They are different sets of reflective questions that you can either use either yourself or in supervision or in training around your understanding of boundaries, okay? So how they've impacted on your own life, how your own values kind of impact on your understanding of boundaries. But then some other questions around when you're faced with a specific boundary issue, how do you feel in that moment? What is that feeling about? Are you feeling fearful, embarrassed? Do you feel that you're competent in dealing with that issue? And all of those kind of step-by-step questions to kind of work through what is it about that issue that is creating those feelings, and then how does that impact on your practice and ultimately the client themselves.
So it's sort of a set of questions that help me to reflect on what's coming up for me.
Yes, that's right, yeah.